Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul and we're going to be discussing tech news. We're going to be starting things out with Nvidia and the GeForce GTX 1060 and 1080 getting faster by 1 GHz. No, not the cores, the memory. We'll go into that in a moment, as well as Intel and AMD, because both companies are of course trying to counter one another. Intel are getting ready to release their Basin platform, supposedly much faster than originally anticipated, and meanwhile AMD are definitely, at least according to more rumours, going to be releasing 16-core Ryzen. And no, I didn't mean to say thread there, I do mean 16-core, but we'll go into that in a second. Let's tackle the Nvidia side of things. It's been rumoured for some time now that both cards are going to be getting faster by 1 GHz. Once again, this is on the memory, not the core, with the GTX 1080 going to 11 gigabits per second, and the 1060 is going to go up to 9. So what does that mean in terms of memory bandwidth? Well, the 1080 is going to squeeze up to 352, which is going to be a little bit higher than the 10 gigabits. It's going to be going about 32 gigabytes per second more. Meanwhile, the 1060 is going to squeeze up to 216, which is plus 24 gigabytes per second, excuse me. The price is also going to go up. So if you thought that this was going to be free or just, basically replacement of SKU, no. So the 1080 currently retails at 500. This new model is going to be at 600 euros, just to clarify. Meanwhile, the 1060 is going to be 250 for the current models, and is going to go up to 300 for the later models. In other words, you're going to be paying more money. The issue I have with this is quite simple. In the case of the 1080, you're not exactly at the 1080 Ti mark, but you're not getting too far off of it. And for the price difference of the 1080 Ti from the 11 Gbps memory modules of the 1080, I would almost say you're better off waiting and just saving up the extra cash. I would, however, speaking of waiting, wait for reviews. Personally, I think this is a little too rich, given how, the 1080 is pretty well established at this point. How memory starved is the GTX 1080? Well, of course, it does depend upon the application, the usage scenario, resolution you're running, and all of that stuff. So maybe, maybe if you're getting some pre-overclocked variant of the card and it overclocks really well, and maybe you're running water cooling, and there are certainly arguments to be made. Personally, however, if you're spending that much on a premium GPU, I would almost be tempted to go for the 1080 Ti. As for the 1060, well, this is obviously a counter to the 580, but really the 580, and I don't mean this in a harsh way, it's not that much better than the 480. It's basically the 480 but with slightly better steroids. It just has, of course, more power going to it. It's got 0.1 volt, and as we discussed just yesterday, you can basically BIOS flash a 480, assuming the core can handle the extra speed, which is, well, the crux of the matter. Anyway, let's talk about AMD some more, shall we? Specifically now on the processor side of things. So we all know that the Ryzen 3, Ryzen 5, Ryzen 7s are out. And they, of course, comprise, well, not all of the processors are out, but we've got at least a couple of them. Ryzen 5s are out, we're waiting on the Ryzen 3s, at least at the time of this video. And more to the point, we know that AMD are planning to release 4, 6, and 8-core CPUs. Great. We've known that very early on. However, there are new rumours which basically add fuel to the fires of previous rumours that AMD are not happy just with 8 cores. In fact, AMD are very, very, very hungry to push into the high-end performance desktop. Now, those individuals, of course, will be using not just gaming as their primary usage of the computer, but also a lot of other stuff. For example, they might be doing 3D rendering, they might be doing animation, they might be doing programming, development, whatever the case may be. They need a lot of cores, perhaps even a lot of virtual machine work. I guess you could say the prosumer. That's the best way of describing that market, right? So, there have been rumours for some time that AMD are working on a 16-core Ryzen CPU. And it would appear, at least according to DigiTimes, this is definitely the case. Now, other sources have said that this is happening, but now DigiTimes are also chiming in on this whole subject, so we've got at least several sources at this point which tell us that AMD are doing this, and supposedly the X399 Yes, X399, I'm sure that Intel are thinking, I don't really like that very much, my friends. But hey, that's the computer industry for you. And this platform is going to be releasing in the third quarter of this year. Well, that's going to make things very interesting. Because Basin Falls is going to be pushed forward. Now, this one's quite interesting because eyebrows raised, at least mine did, when the company cancelled IDF. That was obviously a clear sign that Intel were, well, doing a lot of hard soul searching. They were thinking to themselves, well, what can we do to counter Ryzen? Now, I believe it was the beginning of this month, there were rumours that were swirling around that we would actually be seeing Basin Falls launch a Computex, which is obviously in June. However, yet further rumours pop up from DigiTimes once again, which further clarifies that we will actually be seeing just this happening. And we will be seeing Computex, which takes place, by the way, in Pi, between May the 30th to June the 3rd. Well, it looks like it's going to happen, and it's going to happen a couple of months earlier than what's originally scheduled. And they're also planning to bring forward the launch of Coffee Lake as well. Now, bear in mind, Coffee Lake is based on the 14nm process, and it looks, according to this, we're going to be seeing it brought forward from January 2018 to August 2017. Sticking to Basin Falls for a second, there are going to be 4 SKUs total. So that would be processors available for the platform. 10, 8 and 6 will be based upon the Skylake architecture. Meanwhile, the 4-core model is going to be based on Kaby Lake. So, of course, that is going to be more mainstream platforms, and essentially it's going to be basically identical chips. Now, most of this information, once again, has already been pretty well established with previous rumours, but the fact that we're getting yet more clarification, more confirmation that this is happening, is quite interesting. It does show that Intel are no longer happy to take their sweet time. The reason I really like this, and I find it as kind of like, well, there you go, pretty much, is that, well, it goes to show you what actually Intel could have done all this time if it had the competition. And that's one of the reasons that I keep saying to people that I don't really support one company more than another. Like, my own personal desktop at the moment, I've got a couple. I've got a Ryzen 7 rig, and I've also got an Intel rig. I've got a 4770K. Amy and I on the channel, we technically have a Skylake 6700K. We've got a couple of other PCs as well. And we also had an FX 8350 for a while, but we got rid of that simply because we just didn't have the room anymore, but we were using that as a main rendering rig. It was just like, you know, I support whatever company basically gives me the best product at the time, but with that said, I like a good competition in the marketplace. That's one of the reasons I like AMD to succeed, Nvidia to succeed, and even Microsoft at the moment. I'm happy that the Scorpio looks like it's going to give the PlayStation 4 a bit of a kicking in terms of performance, because it's just good for us as consumers. It basically breeds innovation. Who knows? Maybe Ryzen will be outperformed by Basin Falls. Maybe, you know, Coffee Lake will bring additional cores to the mainstream on Intel side of things with the additional clock speed. Maybe that will then force AMD to, you know, release the next generation of Ryzen processors that much faster. All of it's good. None of it's bad from my point of view. The only thing, of course, that can kind of suck is if you bought, like, just for example, you know, you bought a particular processor from one company and then the next company counters a couple of months later and they bring out something that's much faster or cheaper. That can kind of suck from the perspective of, well, I wish I'd have waited. But hey, unfortunately, as I keep saying, there's no really good time to buy in the technology industry. Remember the beginning of this video where we were talking about the GeForce with the faster memory? Well, yeah, I bought a GTX 1080 with a slower memory. On the other hand, I would have had to have paid more money for the faster memory. On the other hand, you could buy the faster memory GeForce, and as we were discussing, I think it was yesterday, there are rumours that Volta is going to be released this year. I think it's the third quarter if memory serves. So it's like, okay, you could buy that, but then you could get Volta. So, yeah, kind of weird. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.